Now, welcome to Decision 2020 Candidate Profile, where we take a look at those contesting the upcoming general election. I'm Dashan Hendricks. Now, today, we're speaking with Fayval Williams, the incumbent MP for St. Andrew Eastern. Welcome, Fayval.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's just get straight into it. St. Andrew Eastern, a constituency you carried by just 161 votes in the last election. What are you doing different to keep that seat and to probably win by more?
Well, since I started as Member of Parliament, I started from day one to address the needs in the constituency. My focus over the last 4.5 years has been on infrastructure. It's also been on training and development of the residents. And when I talk about infrastructure, I advocated for and ensured that roads were done in St. Andrew Eastern in a lot of different communities. If you drive down Mountain View in a community called Hampstead Park or Backbush, as it's affectionately known, and you care to look to your left, you'll see a lot of roads were done very earlier on, during my MPship. There are other communities with similar experience. I'm not going to say that everything is perfect, but over the 4.5 years, we've been able to provide better roads for many of the residents in many communities. So that was just one thing in terms of my advocacy. In communities that did not have water infrastructure, communities that depended, there's a particular community that depended on a standpipe for about 50% of the residents. Again, strong advocacy there. And the utility company came in and put in the infrastructure. Persons have piped water into their homes. They're able to have the water available and they're paying for the water. So that, I consider that an achievement to be able to do that for that community. There are others with similar experience in Goldsmith Villa. The issue there, when I became Member of Parliament, they say to me, or lights need to be regularized. And I worked with the utility company. I actually allocated a part of my constituency development fund to help persons to do their house wiring so that they could be safely, their homes could be safely wired and safely connected to the grid. And I am also proud of that because when I started out, less than 100 persons had legal connection. And a year later, over 500 persons, households had legal connection to light. And when I checked in just recently with JPS, they were happy because there's been good performance since then.
You mentioned Backbush, affectionately called, one of your strongholds. The problem we tend to have, if it's a problem indeed, with MPs is that they tend to focus first and sometimes only on areas where there are pockets of votes coming from. You mentioned, the place you mentioned seemed to be that. Is that the case in St. Andrew Eastern?
Right, so absolutely, when you looked at that community, in terms of the lack of infrastructure there, I had to act, and act immediately. So can you imagine living in the city, the capital city of Jamaica, and you have to go to a standpipe to get water? I didn't think that was acceptable. But I moved to other communities. I mentioned Goldsmith Villa. There again, the water infrastructure was inadequate. Goldsmith Villa is not known to be a stronghold for the Jamaica Labour Party. PNP stronghold, but nevertheless, I am MP for everyone. And the community asked and said, our water infrastructure is inadequate. And again, I used the strongest advocacy that I could to have the water utility company come in, upgrade the pump station, put in 2 new pumps, lay the pipes so that persons could get piped water to their homes.
All right, as I said at the beginning, this is a constituency which is not won by a lot of votes. In the last 5 elections, 2016 you won by 161. 2011, your competitor at the time won by 254. 07 and 02, just over 500 votes, and 1997, the PNP won it by under 500 votes. So not a strong seat in any direction for the PNP or the JLP. 2 divisions. The strongest you're in is Mona. You're weakest in the Papine division, where Your competitor for this election is the sitting councillor for the Papine division. How do you work through with the support you have in the constituency now in order to return a victory?
Well, as I pointed out earlier on, from day one becoming Member of Parliament, I recognized that. But then at the doorstep of the beginning of my MPship, I looked forward 5 years and I said to myself, what is it that I'm going to tell the voters when I get to the end of the 5 years? What am I going to say to them to convince them to re-elect me again? Okay. And I thought, I have to do the work. I have to put in the work, and it has to be visible. And I can take you to practically all communities in the constituency, and I can point out something visible that I have done in that community, whether it be upgrading of the community centers, putting in one community center 21 computers, bringing in training programs into the center, BPO training when, prior to COVID. We brought in literacy programs there. We even, on one occasion, we did blueprint reading for those young men, especially. There were some women in the classes too who were interested in construction. I can tell you that those students didn't want to go home at the end of the 2-hour classes that they used to have. So these are some of the things I did throughout the constituency that I felt at the end of 5 years when I'm up for re-election again, that the voters would be able to say, MP Williams did this. She had this program. She upgraded our community center. She made our roads better. She helped me when I was going through a period of grief or I had a medical situation. She helped with education. I could always count on her to see her at Christmas, to see her at Easter. I was ever present in churches, at association meetings, especially in the middle class. I mean, most of the communities there have association meetings. I made sure I was present at those meetings so that I would know what the issues are and be able to address the issues as they come up.
One of the biggest issues in St. Andrew Eastern, especially in the Papine division, is crime. One of the communities you represent, August Town, is now under a zone of special operations. Right. And dealing with that crime problem, what more do you believe can be done from your perspective as the MP, as well as from the government's and the police side to nab crime in the body?
Well, as you rightly said, August Town and the communities that make up the greater August Town, they're under a zone of special operations right now. It was recently declared, and this was something that I advocated for strongly because I believe in the ZOSO and what it can do for communities. We've seen examples of that in Jamaica already. So the ZOSO, as you know, has 3 phases where there's a security component to it. So the Joint Security Forces are there now, hold, clear, and build. They're in the clear phase. We're going to move into the build phase, which is a whole of government approach to the community. So you have all the agencies of government, the utility, the water utility company, you have the road network company, you have Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Health. All of the agencies of government can bring services to bear in the community. They will look at infrastructure, physical infrastructure, but they will also consider and bring programs in for the development of persons in the communities, especially the young people.
Do you believe this would be a long-lasting solution to the crime problem, especially in St. Andrew Eastern in general, but especially August Town in particular?
Okay, so if you look at the history of August Town, right? August Town has had periods of peace. The problem is those periods have not been very long periods of time. They get interrupted with violence. When that happens, the students who live in August Town, who provide economic benefit to the homeowners there, to the shopkeepers, right, they don't stay, right? So you have a situation where a community is trying to build during a period of peace. It gets interrupted. The economic benefit flows away from it, and then it goes through this period of violence. And so having gone through that so many times, you can imagine how persons would retreat into themselves, into their homes, maybe not wanting to bother. So what we need in Augustown is a very long period of peace for the residents to begin to engage again and to believe that peace is possible and permanent.
Okay, they're giving the wrap-up signal, but I just want to throw in two quick questions. What are your plans going forward if you should be returned as MP?
Plans going forward to continue the work that I've been doing over the last 4.5 years. There's still many things to do. We need to focus on some of the important assets that
Such as?
In the constituency. So we have the universities, right? We have the Bedward Church in Augustown, the Healing Stream. Those can be made into attractive tourists, places to see, to bring tourists in. And in fact, 1.5 years ago, a program was started by the university to help to bring visitors in through Augustown. But again, the violence interrupted that. Okay. So I'd love to see more student housing. I'd love to see everyone who has a home in Augustown have the ability to have 2 or 3 students in their home, right? And enjoy the economic benefit that comes from that. So those are some of the things I'd work on in, just as an example, Augustown. I know in middle class communities, crime and violence is also an issue. Having been at the many association meetings in the WhatsApp group, I know many communities are saying they need to see installation of more CCTV. I've committed to helping them as much as I can, as best as I can, utilizing a portion of the Constituency Development Fund to do that. So I will continue to work on the priorities of the community, and they differ as I go across the constituency.
Indeed, and the very last question now, you represent a constituency which is unique, having very high net worth people and very low income people together in the one constituency. What is your proudest moment so far as MP for the constituency?
Well, I think my proudest moment so far is, in general, has to do with the improvements that I've been able to make in the constituency. Communities that never thought roads would get done, communities that never thought they'd ever see running water in their homes, communities who never thought that they'd be able to manage their electricity bill, the basics.
But let me just interject you there. And sometimes you hear MPs saying they bring roads and they bring water. In 2020, you think we should be still at that stage where we're proud to bring roads and waters to citizens in their communities?
I have to deal with what is in front of me. That's the reality when I became Member of Parliament, and it's not a reality that I could put aside and say, oh, it's 2016 or 2017, this shouldn't be. That's what it was. And, I acted, I took the action. Whatever advocacy was needed, I wouldn't stop until it's done, because just like you say, in 2020, we shouldn't be talking about these problems. Okay. But we are, and we just have to deal with them so that we, in 2021, 22, we don't have to be speaking about them, because the communities would have had that basic infrastructure in place.
All right, thank you, Ms. Williams. And thanks again for joining us for Decision 2020 Candidate Profile. I'm Dashan Hendricks.